Pitch Perfect 3's writing is sloppy. It features numerous setups that don't pay off. It retreads the same story structure and character arcs for the previous films, dumps on the relationships and accomplishments these ladies earned in 1 and 2, then it goes completely bananas into the action genre, and I enjoyed it. This review will contain mild spoilers. A timestamp for my rating and pros cons chart is in the description. Pitch Perfect 3 begins with the Barden Bellas all getting a bad taste of reality. Following the highs of their college days and their world a cappella championship victory, their careers and lives are not panning out the way they'd hoped. And all they want most desperately, particularly Chloe, is a chance to sing together once more. On the eve of their reunion, Aubrey announces that her father can enter them into an international USO tour, which is also doubling as a music competition. The winning group will open shows for DJ Khaled, earning worldwide exposure. The Barden Bellas come together for one last ride of the contest, but their opposition is talented and fierce, and unbeknownst to them, an ominous figure from one of the ladies' past is on their heels. If that plot synopsis got a bit too silly for you, then you may not enjoy Pitch Perfect 3. The film starts out fairly grounded and relatable. Beca loses her job, Fat Amy is struggling as a street performer, and Chloe and the other ladies are dissatisfied in their professions. To top it all off, they're all single in their late 20s and early 30s. I bet they all have boyfriends. One of them bemoans as they watch the younger replacement Bellas on stage. It would seem the movie is ready to tackle modern concerns. Success in college doesn't necessarily translate into the real world. The talents you have may go underutilized unless you nurture them yourself. And long-term relationships don't always work out. I don't expect these topics to be addressed seriously. This is a sillier comedy after all. Fat Amy punching a shark balloon amusingly communicates all of their frustrations. This opening section also makes solid and tight editing choices, avoiding redundancy by following Becca's bad day and then discovering the other Bella's issues through quick horror-style flashes later on. The cinematography is colorful and vibrant, the musical performances are well cut and toe-tapping. I really did tap my foot a couple times throughout the movie. And all the actresses are energetic and timing their performances very well. I'm pleased to say that Pitch Perfect 3 maintains this momentum and efficient execution throughout. However, if you value substance in your writing and are a fan of the first 2 films, then you might really dislike this movie. I remember being disappointed with Pitch Perfect 2, particularly not enjoying the overextended Fat Amy and Bumper subplot. Bumper plays no role in Pitch Perfect 3, for which I am grateful, but this decision will only worsen my disinterest in Bumper's subplot if I ever rewatch Pitch Perfect 2. Likewise, Becca's accomplishments and relationship are reset. The only important element carried over from Pitch Perfect 2 is Haley Steinfeld's Emily, the newest member turned captain of the Barden Bellas. While her inclusion in Pitch Perfect 3 is nice, Emily has so many college responsibilities that I question how she was able to go on this USO tour. Everyone was wearing coats in the beginning of the film, but maybe there was a time jump forward to summer, though they are wearing coats on the army base as well. Maybe she took the winter semester off. How does her mother feel about that? Emily writes no new songs and has no arc this time around. What I'm trying to say is, Pitch Perfect 3 undercuts Pitch Perfect 2. You can watch Pitch Perfect 1 and then skip to Pitch Perfect 3. This may bother fans of Pitch Perfect 2, which offered a solid conclusion for the Bellas. What about fans of good writing? Well, after the first act, Pitch Perfect 3 settles into a familiar pattern. The USO tour doesn't teach the ladies humility, respect for the work of our armed forces, or give them a new perspective on their own issues from the beginning of the film. Instead, it's an excuse to meet some cute guys, travel around Europe, hang out in hotel rooms, party in fancy dresses, and have another singing competition. As soon as the Bellas arrive in an army hangar, they flirt and joke with a hunky soldier called Chicago, then head inside to find a concert stage set up with their competitors waiting. The humorously named DJ Dragonnuts and girl band Evermoist. There's a country band too. This leads immediately into one of Pitch Perfect's traditional riff-offs. "Of course it's another competition!" yells Gail. And apparently also, of course, John and Gail tag along again to make lovably sexist remarks and tease the Bellas under the guise of making a documentary. Afterwards, most of the tour and competition are relegated to a cappella montages. What about the Bellas themselves? Lilly has a funny relationship. Emily gets teased, but inspires the others briefly. Cynthia cracks wise and gives the other ladies perplexed glares at appropriate moments. Flo makes a few jokes, I guess. And Jessica and Ashley continue to get slighted and dumped on. I laughed because of how harsh it was, but come on, give them a break! Chloe and Aubrey are shown a little love, and it's nice to have Aubrey back in the main group. Chloe is given a romantic interest, and Aubrey has daddy issues. Both of these side plots are underdeveloped because the film feels compelled to focus on Beca and Fat Amy again. Anna Kendrick and Rebel Wilson turn in snappy performances, and there's no doubt they are the heart of this series. I just wish the writers could have allowed the other ladies more time to shine this go around. For example, Beca didn't see eye to eye with her father in Pitch Perfect 1, and she could have helped Aubrey relate with her dad. Additionally, Beca and Aubrey could have bonded, talking about the downsides of their respective long-distance relationships. Fat Amy, through her experiences with Bumper, could have given Chloe odd yet heartfelt relationship advice. Instead, Beca repeats the same development she had in Pitch Perfect 2, complete with a very similar scene to display her talents, and she is given another love interest. A young woman in my audience exclaimed aloud, "He's creepy." I agreed internally, and thankfully the movie was self-aware of her observation. Just as in Pitch Perfect 2, Fat Amy gets another extended subplot. Someone from her past returns, which was a little strange. I was genuinely pleasantly surprised by the casting, and I don't want to spoil it for you either. But this story thread was moving into soap opera territory. I wasn't sure if that was a joke in itself. The film treats the events seriously enough, so much so that Fat Amy's subplot takes over the main plot. Yes, Pitch Perfect 3 spends all this time building up a competition, and then it cuts the final performance. From a pacing and plot standpoint, it is a good call. But why introduce this contest in the first place? The only reason this competition exists is for the riff-off scene, to reinforce the Bellas' insecurities established in Act 1, and to put Beca through the usual motions. Dropping the contest and Becca's plot would have allocated time for Chloe, Aubrey, and Fat Amy's plots to have more substance. And while performing for the troops, the ladies would have had an opportunity to reflect on and develop their individual passions besides singing. Heck, you could keep the riff-off as an initial friendly rivalry between the USO performers. Perhaps Evermoist and DJ Dragon Nuts could even offer some amusingly on-point sage advice to the Bellas later on. It is a refreshing change of pace to avoid a final face-off, but climactic a cappella performances are one of the key selling points of the Pitch Perfect series. This time around, vocal combat gives way to Mortal Kombat. Pitch Perfect 3 goes totally off the rails into action spoof territory for its final act. While impromptu riff-offs may have stretched suspension of disbelief in the first two films, the culmination of Fat Amy's subplot in this movie is nonsensical, unbelievably absurd, and over-the-top ridiculous. This is when many in the audience will fully turn on Pitch Perfect 3 and maybe even hate it. I was giddy as a schoolboy, for very specific reasons. When Ride Along 2 came out, this might seem like a non sequitur. When Ride Along 2 came out, my friend and I joked that Universal Studios needed to start its own cinematic universe to compete with Marvel. Ice Cube and Kevin Hart from the Ride Along films could easily translate into the Fast and the Furious universe. Tyrese Gibson's character is from Miami, after all, and he might have crossed paths with these two. Then we proposed the Pitch Perfect and Fast and the Furious universe crossover. Pitch and Furious, Furious Pitch, or Fast Perfect. The idea of these a cappella theater ladies being thrust into an international adventure with Vin Diesel's crew was hilarious to us. Fast forward to the opening night of Pitch Perfect 3, and we are both losing our minds. While the audience around us was oscillating between chuckling and disbelief, my friend and I were laughing our heads off and having a great time. It was incredibly preposterous and on point with our stupid idea to the degree that we wouldn't have been surprised if there had been a Vin Diesel post-credit scene. Fat Amy backflip kicks a guy. Pitch Perfect 3 pleased a very peculiar desire for me. It was my fetish. The highlight of the experience, complete with exciting a cappella action music at the beginning of the film. Having said all that, this may be the final straw for many viewers. If the shoe were on the other foot, I can imagine the backlash. Fast 9 sets up the usual racing heist in the first two-thirds, and then Dom's crew has an a cappella riff-off with Charlize Theron? Weird. After all of this craziness, Pitch Perfect 3 does settle back down and provide a detailed, heartwarming conclusion for the Barden Bellas. except for Jessica and Ashley. How much you enjoy Pitch Perfect 3 will depend on how attached you were to the developments in the previous films and how zany you are comfortable with the material getting. I haven't watched 1 or 2 in 2.5 years. If you didn't like the first 2 films, this probably won't win you over. If you love the first 2 films, then this one might be divisive. Another one of my audience members muttered aloud, "This is stupid." But there were a few groups of young ladies who were delighted and laughed throughout the film. It can be a fun, surface-level, guilty pleasure. It's energetic and entertaining, even though it's eye-rolling and short on substance. I really enjoy the chemistry that these young ladies share with one another. They all appear to be having a good time, and it rubbed off on me. I give Pitch Perfect 3 3 out of 5 stars. Fat Amory is... Fat Amory. Oh my gosh.